back to the Route 77 podcast. In today's episode, we are diving into a topic that often stirs up many questions and emotions: the concept of waiting, especially in the context of relationships. You know, there's a common notion that waiting, particularly for a spouse, means putting your life on hold. But is that really what it should be about? Today, we're going to unpack the idea of active versus passive waiting and explore how being single is an opportunity for growth, discovery, and deepening our relationship with God. So whether you're single and searching or simply interested in understanding this aspect of the single life, stay tuned as we delve into what it means to wait actively and live fully. Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. I am your host, Natasha, and I am here with Monique.
Hello.
And sadly, no David. He seemed like he was very sick this week.
Yeah.
So he could be sleeping. Probably sleeping.
Poor guy.
So hopefully he'll be good for next week. So especially as he's getting back into school again and said this all comes up. So
No more setbacks. We
Right?
don't like setbacks.
exactly. Let's see.
So today's topic.
Oh, I was waiting for you.
Were you waiting for me?
I was waiting for you.
What were
Are
you
we
waiting
for Godot?
Oh, were you waiting? Oh, this isn't a message about waiting.
It might be.
Oh, the misunderstanding of waiting.
Misunderstandings, yeah.
Yes.
That could arise.
I don't know about anybody else, but I hate waiting. Don't wait for me, but we can wait for God.
Yeah. Earlier this week, I came across a meme. I'm a part of a few Facebook singles groups, and it's not really because I'm looking for somebody. I'm not looking for somebody, but I'm not really actively.
You're
But-
looking for inspiration.
Yeah,
aren't
I
you?
want to see what Christian singles are talking about. So what better way to see that than most of the time it's just, hey, I'm so-and-so from here. I'm looking for my soulmate, and it's always the same. But this one says, God will send you a love that will redeem the time that you've waited. Make room for what you're praying for.
Do you know how long I've been waiting?
Yeah. It's a good, in theory, kind of thing. Don't worry. It's not wasted time. God will redeem it. All this type of stuff. So just be ready. Make some room. It's like there's a baby coming in the house. You got to get the room ready.
Gotta get the room ready.
Get the paint and everything. Don't worry, it's not here yet,
Crib.
but it'll be there. Your time spent in that, making that room a room, will be redeemed because the baby will come.
Yes.
The faulty understanding is the fact that two things is one, that just because you prepare for something doesn't mean it's coming.
Ask any mother who's lost her child.
Yeah, exactly. And two, it's somehow that's all this period of singleness is just rearranging the house so that you're ready for your spouse.
Isn't it also the misunderstanding of redeeming that time?
Redeeming implies that there's a negative thing,
Right.
that and things do not need to be redeemed if there isn't the cause of sin on it. I believe, like, it could be the sin of just the result of sin being in the world, natural disasters, or you getting cancer or something that you have no control over. That could be redeemed because it's the sin that's corrupted the world. But this almost seems like the waiting itself needs to be redeemed. And you're like, is that implying, without understanding, but you're implying that waiting is actually wrong? Because you can control the fact of what you're doing in that time.
Yes. Yes. See, I ascribed to that. I
Yeah.
think that scripture verse is taken out of context in that respect. I came to that realization after 10 years of waiting for somebody who never showed up. And then I was sitting there going, what about all the time before that never got redeemed? And all this other time when I was waiting for the right person and it never got redeemed. So I think personally that we are using scripture for our own purposes.
Yes.
To make us feel better about something that's not happening.
Yeah. And it's also in a way that we've sinned.
Yes.
And somehow it's okay that we sin because God will redeem it. It's okay that we had premarital sex because God will redeem it. It's okay that we lied because God will redeem it. It's okay that we waited instead of actually actively using our singleness
To do
because God can redeem it. And it's like, that is the wrong assumption to make about God's redeeming grace.
Right.
It's
right.
like that's a sin in itself. To assume that you can do something wrong And it's okay because God will redeem it.
Right. And that's for myself, it was that somebody had done something wrong to me. So I was destroyed. I was downtrodden. I was depressed. Am I ever going to have or find that person who will love me unconditionally? Yes. Amazingly so, God. But I never did find that person because I'm trying to lay upon a person something that they cannot fulfill anyways. So
It's just sad to see that people are just sitting. Basically, when you're waiting, you're just sitting there, like
yes.
in their view, waiting, just not progressing with life in any sense because they can't because they're not married. And somehow getting married will just, it's like we're at like a toll gate. And we can't pay it, like we can't continue with our journey until we've paid the toll, but the toll is it comes in the form of a marriage. So you're just sitting there at this toll gate, I don't know, scrolling your phones and waiting to hear if, like, for God to drop them in our laps, essentially. Or we'll just go onto like these type of websites and hope we can find somebody there. So it's just
It's funny too because many of the Bible translations have changed that verse in
Psalm.
no in Isaiah from they that wait upon the Lord to those who hope in the Lord. So in the NASB, which is supposed to be the truer,
Like the more word for word translation, I think.
yes. So Isaiah 40 from 28 to 31. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary or tired. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives strength to the weary, and to the one who lacks might, he increases power. Though youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous young men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. So this is where the real waiting is supposed to be. You're waiting, and when I wrote a little blog but probably and it was about that verse, and it was about waiting and how we hate to wait.
Here's a person's thing going, are you waiting on God for the choice of your life partner? Are you trusting God for who to marry? Maybe you have been through lots of disappointments and heartbreaks. And probably you're already in your late 20s, early 30s, late 30s, whatever the case. It is true that it's not easy to wait. The waiting room is the most difficult rooms to be in life. Like, should we really be in a waiting room? There's certain points that we do wait on God,
Yes.
but it doesn't mean like our entire life comes to us.
No, you don't go and sit on the couch and sit there. I'm just going to
I'm
wait.
just going to wait for God to answer this whatever prayer.
Like he's going to come knocking on my door.
Yeah. And it's just, but what about do you not eat then? Do you not sleep? Do you not, like, the thing is,
Do you
it's
not
like,
work? Do you not?
yeah. But if you do those things just like out of necessity and you're not focused on them and you're just checked out of life because you're in this waiting,
You are not doing what you should be doing.
yeah.
You're not really waiting on God. It's more like you're throwing a 2-year-old temper tantrum and you want God to give you what you have asked for, and there is no mistake. You will keep kicking and punching the floor and screaming out until you get what you want. Be careful what you ask for.
And it's just,
Like the Israelites who didn't want God to be their king. They wanted their own king, so they got Saul. And I don't know if you know this, but Saul means you asked for it. So
and there's just so many people just going, don't just wait for the sake of waiting, but pray and be watchful as you wait on God for your life partner. It's yes and no. It still has this idea that you're just sitting on the sidelines of life.
yeah.
Waiting for that moment when you can put your car in gear and keep going. And that's the wrong view of waiting.
Yeah. I don't recall when the turning point came for me where I stopped sitting in my condo, depressed, watching TV, waiting for this change in my life. Yes, I do. Actually, I remember that day. It was the day I turned left.
And now that you've seen Doctor Who, you know what I was talking about. Easter eggs in her life she never knew about until she's heard Doctor Who.
Never knew I had a Doctor Who Easter egg running in my life.
And I kept going, see, you turned left. And she literally did. She turned left. If she had turned right, then it wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't have worked. no, now, yeah, no, I turned left. Just call me Donna. No, but it was that day when I decided that I was going to stop sitting around. That it didn't mean that I wasn't waiting for God.
But you actually, I think you responded to a nudging of his.
Yeah, where he
You
said,
were kind of like, well, no, yeah, I'm older. I can't do the taekwondo and blah, blah. But then you took it.
yeah, that it was the open sign. It was open.
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh, it's open. Since I'm here, I'll go and just ask.
Yeah.
Sure. Let me test you. You're a
Yes.
shoo-in.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't realize that those are the moments that you've been waiting on God for.
Yeah. Yeah.
You couldn't orchestrate some of these things,
No.
but you can be waiting for God's prompting, his leading,
His direction.
calling.
Yeah.
But while you're living your life, if you had just been sitting in your condo and not going to the dentist.
Because that's a thing. Or I could have decided that I wasn't going to go to that dentist. I was going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But just because of my work schedule, this dentist was open on days where other dentists were closed.
usually
And
they're
those are my days. So I went, oh, I'm just going to go there. And it's funny because I'd gone to this dentist a couple of times and I never saw it. And I don't know what prompted me to look left. Actually, I looked right first because when I
If
was
you're
walking
walking
in,
he was right.
but when I walked out, it was like, now turn left.
The open sign was there. And that was the moment that changed for you.
Yeah.
And for me, it was different. Like Taekwondo did a lot for me, but there was actually a moment, and I don't really know what day this moment happened, but I know there was a moment that I all of a sudden accepted the fact that I might never be a mother and was like, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And God helps to create this attitude within me that being a mother or not being a mother, either one is okay.
Yes.
And I know, and it was just before I really started to, I might have been at Taekwondo because I was there a year before I started teaching, but I know I couldn't have taught with the joy that I had teaching if it hadn't been for that moment. Because prior to that, every time I saw kids or babies, I was just a basket case because it was not me.
Yep.
And that's not, it's like a whole other envy and 10 commandments thing. But that's the moment that God worked in my heart and was like, and it came, and at the time I was still married, but it also led to me going, okay, it's okay not to be.
I should have brought my book in. Some of the things that Pastor Justin was saying today in his message, which is so relevant for today's message. I should have brought my book in. When we are feeling fear and jealousy or insecure, this is when we know that we are relying on our own control and not letting God have control. I'm going to run my show. I'm going to run this business. I'm going to be the one who says and dictates. And that's when fear and jealousy start creeping in. So when you put your trust in God and say, God, I will let you decide what's going to happen in my future. I'm not going to push those. I'm just going to do the things that I'm supposed to be doing. Learning more about him, working for him, and working my own life. Going to work, coming home, keeping.
Like I stopped living on the sidelines of my own life.
Yes. Yeah.
And I started taking hold of my life in the ways that I could. I don't have control over everything, but there's things that you do have control over. I think God expects us to.
And I think this is where that verse, he will give you life and life in abundance. And that means he doesn't want you living on the sidelines.
No.
He wants you in life. He wants you engaged in life. He wants you engaged with people. He wants you engaged with people.
Yeah. And the thing is too, I lost my train of thought. Went out the window.
Did the train leave?
Yeah.
Was it a bullet train?
Must have been. It was there and it was gone.
That's
okay.
I've experienced
It'll come back if it's meant. But yeah, oh yeah. Because there's the verses that are, what was the verse I was thinking of?
Psalm 27?
No, it was actually, to be content in all things, like to learn to be content in the New Testament.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's the key. Because my ex, there's so many people, and I don't know if I actually thought about found in my mind logically, but there's this idea that contentment means accepting what you have at the moment and that it'll never change. Like that, if you're okay with not being married, then you'll never get married. There's that kind of like idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so But actually, it's just learning to live with what God has given you in the moment and doing what you can with what God has given you, like the parable of the talents. And then,
You were looking at Philippians 4:11.
and it was a P one, I can't remember.
Yeah. Not that I speak from need, for I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am in.
Yeah. And it's just,
I know how to get along with the little. I know how to get along in prosperity. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having abundance and suffering need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me.
yeah. So you
Amen,
can
eh?
add, yeah, you can add on there. Like, I know you can be content whether you're married or you're not married, whether you're a
Yep.
parent or not a parent. Like,
Yep.
that's the key to the happiness within God.
Apparently.
Yeah.
That was bad.
Yeah. Just the fact that people just consume, waiting and just sitting, and you're essentially not content
No.
because you're waiting for something to change so that you can be
Yep.
content.
And when the more time passes, like you've gone through another Valentine's Day or you've gone through another birthday or another Christmas, and you're still by yourself, you are still self-focused. And then you are no longer content, and then you start getting upset. And then you start getting upset with God. And chances are he's probably sitting there going, when are you going to put me first?
And he's waiting
And he's
because
waiting.
he's not going to push his will on people.
No, and he is such a gentleman.
He's,
and
hey, you can
patient.
do I was going to do this. You wanted to do yours. Okay.
You have no idea what good things God might have in store. Like, had somebody told me before I started Taekwondo that I was going to be in this path and that I was going to come into this place at this point in time, I'd have gone.
I told you, like, this choice of you to turn left is going to change your life in ways you would never know. And you're just like, it's just Taekwondo. And I'm just asking if I'd enjoy. And it's not.
Not Doctor Who. Or yeah, I'm not throwing that in there.
Yeah, you're not enjoying this at all.
Not at all. Because they have so many of those little things.
Every-
No. I say that loud.
It's there now. Once
It's
you're
there.
in, it's there, and
It's like a
strikes are everywhere.
disease.
You can't stop.
I can't stop. It's one of those kind of things because we all go through these times. It's hard when you're lonely.
Mhm.
It's hard when you face another holiday or another significant event, or when people keep asking, when are you getting married and when are you having kids? And you just sit there going,
Yeah, because
I'm
like I had a
waiting.
person this year was like, find a boyfriend this year. Come on, you're a young woman. He's just like probably in his 60s. And it's just, but and I just kind of smile and nod because it's like, it's not my goal. I'm not making it a resolution. I'm not making it
Nope.
if it happens, I'm not actively seeking it. Like at this point, I'm not really interested, but it doesn't mean that it won't change. Like I'm leaving the possibility open, but I'm going forward
With your life.
with my life as it is now. And if God chooses to change that in some way, then I will be open to it.
Yeah.
I think it's the worst thing is when you start to being like saying never to God. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to do that because you're just closing off avenues. And I don't mean I'm never going to sin or things like that, like where I hope that you choose that you prefer not to do these things. It's like when you start saying, I'm never going to be a pastor's wife. I'm never going to go to another country. I'm never going to marry someone who's not taller than me. Or like all these things that you put like all these limitations and you've already
Close those doors on your own self.
and you don't know what God has called for you. And
Nope.
you're not really, and there's a time like you can actually wait. And that's what we're talking about like active and passive waiting. Like you can actively wait. If you're told by your doctor that the specialist is going to call you with an appointment, you're not going to sit there and stare at the phone for days and days
Waiting for this
phone call. You're going to live your life, but have the phone ready in case they call.
Yeah. You
So
may check it every 5 minutes.
Yeah, you're like,
Because I know that feeling. Is he going to call today?
Yeah.
Maybe next hour.
Yeah. But you don't just sit there in a corner and like stare at your phone in the hopes that this specialist will call. And after a while, you might go, okay, are they really going to call? You call your doctor, you make sure this message got through, but you actively wait.
Yeah.
Because your mind is always at the phone, or make sure I have my phone with me. I prepared for the call to come, especially even like with Amber's surgery, you're prepared for the call to come.
Yep.
But until then, you were just doing your thing. You were going there every day. You were switching it with Marlene. You had my
phone.
Weren't just like
my phone was there. It was on. It was waiting.
but you
But I
were
was
doing
still
the things
doing
that you
the things I
needed
needed
to
to
do.
do. Yeah. That's a really good word. I
Yeah.
like that.
But that's what, like, when we look at the parable of the talents, and sometimes we narrow it down to money too much. Yeah, it can be applied to money, but it's applied to anything that God gives you. And if you, like the one guy, he literally just sat there and waited for him to come back. He is buried in the ground and nothing's going to happen to this until he comes back. And I'm going to be able to say, here's every cent you gave me, and just waiting. And like literally just waited on the side of the road and did
Sitting
not,
on top of it,
yeah,
not doing
the
anything.
things that was given by God to him. Like it could be money, it could be gifting, it could be time. It's like all these things can be equally applied. And if you're waiting for your life partner,
It's like you're sitting on that.
are you just sitting on all the other things that God has given you, or are you going to be actively? Because even like he said, like in the parable, he said, even if you had put it in the bank, it would have gained interest.
Yeah.
So even if you've done anything with it, but if we're sitting here waiting on the side of the road, then we're not doing anything with what God has given us.
And what did he say? Depart from me, you wicked servant.
Yeah, exactly. Like you
do not want to be called a wicked servant.
no, and you don't want to be thrown out of the kingdom. I don't think God's saying like
Then he's going to throw you out of the kingdom.
for waiting, but not using what you were given wisely.
But think about your own self. Like, how much will you grow just sitting there by the side of the road doing nothing?
Yeah. And what is he saying? Well done, good and faithful servant. Is
To the
that
others.
not the word that you want to hear?
Yeah.
That you've used all that God has given you?
Yeah.
If God gave you $5 or he gave you 20 years and you died young, or he gave you 80 years and you died at a good old age, what did you use that? I feel like my 20s was not used.
Nope.
And the 30s were usurped because of decisions that I made. So it was not used in a way that was beneficial for the kingdom.
Yeah. I had the same time frame too. Like my 20s, because with Amber, that all happened in the late 20s. So 20s and 30s were literally destroyed for me. And then when I got into my 40s, that's when I went, now what? I don't know what to do. I don't know where to be. I don't know how to act. So I did do some church things, became the head librarian of the church, joined a prayer group, which was great. We had amazing prayer time. Even in that waiting period where I thought, I still did things because I didn't like to not do things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it wasn't until 2017 that my life just went from a stagnant flat line to soaring off into the outers.
Yeah.
Out into the stratosphere.
No. Yeah, and that's the same for me. Like I didn't have this. That if somebody once said I wasted my 20s, and he's don't say that because like everything that you learned you can pass on, and I'm like yeah and no, because I did waste it. It was sinful what I had done with my life.
Yeah,
and so it doesn't mean that again God can't redeem that.
Right.
So I can use what I've learned to help others.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it was right.
He cleanses it. He has redeemed it. He has forgiven it.
Yeah.
What have you learned from it?
Yeah. And it doesn't mean
that's a really good way to put. He has redeemed that time. Yes, he has.
But it was not like, it doesn't mean that it was okay.
No.
Again,
no.
It's not. Christ has died and been there like to the atonement for my sins, and it has been paid for. But it was something that needed to be paid for. It was not done in a proper way. And
I had the same.
Yeah.
But I wasn't living for God at that time either. So for me to say, yeah, God redeemed that time because he had forgiven that when I accepted him as Lord and Savior. So then when Amber went into the hospital and her life was on the line, my life stopped because everything then was about her. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it was more about trying to deal with trauma. And when you don't get proper counseling, if you've had a trauma happen to you and that is holding you back from stepping out into your life, please go get help, get some counseling, get somebody.
Can be a way to
process.
Like it's a way that you live.
Yeah.
Because if you don't work through these things,
they will bog you down.
It will bog you down. Yeah. And so it's a way. It doesn't mean that you're not progressing in life. If you just sat there and didn't get it, then that would be more like not progressing.
It's hanging on to your own stuff without dealing with it and talking to. I was ashamed, which what kept me from going and talking to other people or to finding the help I needed.
Mhm.
And I wasted 10 years trying to solve the issue myself.
Yeah.
And I am only now discovering how weak I made myself back then by just letting it take control over my life. And that's not a good way to wait for
No.
your healing to happen.
Oh, and if anybody's wondering, there's a really good program offered by the MCC. It's a group counseling for women who have been through abusive marriages, and it's called the End Abuse Program When Love Hurts. And it's really good. It's a year-long program.
Yeah.
And it really good because one of the best things about it is that you're with other women and you know that you find out you're not the only one
Who has gone through the
who's
same
gone through it.
experience.
And sometimes these people have been like several years out of an abusive relationship, but they're still dealing with it. But they're all see people at various points and you realize, hey, I have hope because look, this person's this far away from me. And other people can look to you and go, hey, I have hope. So
there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Don't think that, oh, well, it was so long ago. It's not worth it. It's worth to have the counseling.
Especially if you find yourself in patterns that are indicative of what you had gone through, where things like distrust or you're creating red flags that aren't there.
Yeah. Or even getting into similar relationships.
Tending
to do that. So yeah, just to kind of decide, just don't be afraid to go get help. And there's lots of really good counselors out there. If you want to ask us, we can how to find some. We have contacts here in Abbotsford and they have contacts elsewhere.
But I find that people in these kind of situations will use this excuse, I'm waiting for God, because I think that's what I did too. I'm waiting for God to bring me the perfect person.
Perfect. We're all sinners.
We are.
And we're going to be marrying a sinful person if you get married. And it doesn't mean that it'll be abusive. And it doesn't mean that it'll be bad. It just means that you're going to be two sinful people trying to live through life instead of just you.
Yeah.
So it's going to be ups and downs. And that's why we really push the fact that you need to understand and be complete in your singleness before you can be a complete married person. We don't want there to be this idea that the other person's going to fix things.
Yes.
And that's giving them a responsibility and expectation of power that they don't need or deserve. And if you can find that within Christ and God, find completeness, that's why I keep saying, like it says that two people become one. It's not two half people becoming a person.
No.
In God's way of doing things, doing the impossible, he takes one and one, and that's equals one.
Yep.
And
only God would make that.
And God equals one.
It's that multiplication, because 1 times 1 is 1. And that's what we are. It's not 1 plus 1. It's 1 times 1.
Yeah.
Because with God, he makes this equation that works, and it's not halves, it's two wholes. But if you're not whole first in God, it's not going to work.
No. And I think that you should really look at yourself and stop saying, I'm waiting for the person, and start looking at yourself and going, hey, if I never get married, would that be okay? And if you're saying no, or you're scared of that, or it makes you depressed, then you got to look within, because you're going to be looking for the other person to fulfill something they're never meant to fulfill.
You mentioned here about Ruth, a biblical perspective on waiting. So what is the thing there in Ruth that you were?
She stayed with her mother-in-law and years after her husband passed away.
Not even
she had
thinking.
Because her mother-in-law was like, if I gave birth tomorrow, it would be forever before you could marry my son. And it was a boy. But that meant nothing to her finding another spouse.
No.
She didn't look for Boaz.
No.
She wanted to stay with her mother-in-law.
Take care of her.
She wanted to take care of her. She went out and she was like, hey, we need to eat. And she went out, and it was the fact that she was out working hard that caught Boaz's eye. And it wasn't, she wasn't flirting with him. There's a whole thing later with how she
covered him with her.
Was laying at his feet. But that wasn't the original. Like, there was a whole story of where the Redeemer is and all that, but it was not her intention. She wasn't going to find a husband. She wasn't flirting with Boaz on the side of the field. She was just going about her business. Like, she had no idea who he was or whether he was married or not. And she just was like, hey, he was really nice, and went home.
That's her thing when Naomi was telling Ruth and her other Orpah, her other daughter-in-law, to go back to their families and because they were Moabites for one. And she says, I can't have, you have a better chance of finding another spouse. And Ruth, like she said to Ruth, she said, behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, do not plead with me to leave you or to turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you sleep, I will sleep. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and worse, if anything but death separates me from you. To her, it was her mother-in-law. She loved her mother-in-law, wanted to be with her. She didn't care about getting married. She wasn't
a mother even. So
wasn't even a mother. No, she wasn't saying, for that, maybe you'll find somebody or
in that culture, that was a huge deal. Get your toy. Here's your toy. Go. Get it. So that was a huge deal for her not to be married or have a child. And yet she was willing to forgo that, to stay with her mother-in-law, who she loved, and to live the life that would have been called but to be as widows. And because she could have stayed with a family where she would have had men folk taking care of her. And that's what you needed as a woman a lot of the time in that era, to have the person that was making sure that you're okay.
Yep. And we felt, yes, exactly.
And she would have probably been found the person, they thought it would have found her a husband right away. But God blessed her and Boaz, and then she became one of the ones in the genealogy of Christ. So you saw a person who did not just sit on the side of the road or take the easy way to find a spouse. She had given up that dream. And so that was just, and it was, again, we're not going to say, oh, because you give up the dream means that God's going to bless you like Ruth and give you a husband.
Boaz and put you on the
yeah, it doesn't mean that, but it doesn't mean that he won't, but it means that he'll bless you.
Yeah, and you don't know what his blessings will be, and it will be enough to, I think part of it is that we don't want to have to rely on God solely for everything, because we want that tangible. This is what happened with the Israelites when they wanted a king and they chose Saul, because they wanted something they could hold on to, something they can control and manipulate. Yeah. And we want that same thing. We want something to grab onto. And God is not something we can grab onto. So, you want that. And I get that, because when I was living by myself in my condo, there were so many times I was like, Lord, I just wish there was somebody to hold me. Somebody I could sit beside, lean on, talk to. And if I wake up in the middle of the night from a nightmare, that they're there with me. Right?
And now you have Hero.
Now I have Hero. Mind you, he sleeps at the foot of the bed and doesn't really pay much attention to me anyways. But he does give me lots of kisses before he goes to sleep. So that's good.
But we found a fulfillment in a different sort between us. Yeah. In a way that we never really sought to look for.
No. Yeah.
And again, it's purely platonic.
Yes. Because we don't reiterate that too much.
Yeah. We always think like that. We think they just protest too much. No, we're protesting just enough.
Yeah.
Because it's such a...
Because in this day and age, everybody will look at you and say...
Because there's the only relationships are sexual.
Yeah.
And best friend relationships are non-existent except in a sexual realm.
Or if you're a teenager.
Yeah, or a kid.
Because once you get married, how many of your best friend relationships survive after that?
Yeah.
Like my best friend Michelle is now married and lives with her husband most of the time down in the States, but she also spends time with her mom in Calgary. And although we chat on Facebook and we chat occasionally in Messenger, our relationship has changed now. She has her husband to rely on, and that's a good thing. And I am not upset and I am not jealous, because I want the very best for her. She has been my best friend since I was 12 years old. But just because you have a best friend here doesn't mean you can't have other best friends as well.
Yeah. And things happen where, like you said, we're not expecting this. And it was like Taekwondo, then Korea, then just things.
God said, I'm going to introduce you to somebody who is like-minded.
Yeah.
And it's just
And it just works really well. And so you never know what God will find for you when you live
and Korea was pretty awkward for both of us, because we are sharing, or we don't really know
each other. And it was like,
after
2 weeks, especially when you sleep on the floor and we can't move, the next morning
we laughed about that. I can't get up on the floor. Just
So, yeah.
Yep.
So we just want to really, as we bring this to a close, we want this time of life to be a time of active waiting.
Yeah.
What you're doing is you're not waiting for God to provide you a spouse. You're waiting on God's promptings and leadings in your life. And
To
that,
lead you into a good and
like what God wants
fulfilling
you for your life.
Right.
And you want to travel down that road actively with what the things that you can do and the things you can do in faith. And you never know where God's going to lead it.
No.
And again, the percentages. Yeah, there's a high percentage that God will lead you into marriage. But it's better for you to be like,
But is it really high percentages or is it really 50-50?
I don't know. But I think the generalization is like people are going to get married rather than not get married. And if you look at percentage wise, and especially in North America. But the thing is, if you work on yourself and try to become one in Christ and complete person, then just you're going to be bringing like your best to the marriage.
Become a person that is marriageable.
Yeah, but you're just going to be a benefit to your spouse
and
not expecting them to be God in your life.
Yeah.
And then you can move towards the God's calling in both your lives as a unit and in a much healthier way.
Because you don't want to take a good thing and turn it into a God thing, which makes it a bad thing.
Yes, exactly.
I didn't repeat anything that Justin told me.
No, we got Justin Easter eggs everywhere.
Yes, we do. We may have Doctor Who Easter eggs, or we have Pastor Justin Easter eggs, and hopefully we have a few of our own.
Yeah.
We do, because you said something and he mentioned it in the solutions for this.
So, so take this time.
Develop healthy relationships with other people, because that's one of the ways my friend Carrie and Gordon, George, I don't know why I called him Gordon, George, because they were introduced by family members because they went, I actually think I know somebody, and they hit it off.
And the fact that the person knew both of them and they were like willing to get them together. Are you a type of person that people would be like, yeah, I would want to introduce to people because they're going to be a benefit to the other people that they know. That's the thing. You're trying to be the type of person that Christ is.
Yeah.
And if it's not focusing on the here and now and sitting on the side of the road, and you actually are actively living your life, then
being happy and content in your daily life, whether you are married or not.
Yeah. Because that's very important, because marriage brings its own ups and downs.
Yes.
And if
it's not easy.
And you don't know if you'll become single again for various reasons. Like George, like he, with his first wife passing away from cancer like that, it was not on their plans.
And they're young.
And fairly young, in his early 40s.
Yep.
The early like 30s. And then I don't think he wasn't specifically looking for somebody else.
Nope.
It had been a couple of years, and then it just happened. So it was like, you don't.
And Carrie she had given up looking for people a long time ago, because she said, I'd gone on these dates, but there's just nothing there.
Yeah.
That's because God was telling her that he had somebody better for her, and she just needed to wait.
Yeah. And so you just go about your life, do your thing.
So that's what she did. She did her life. She traveled, she worked, she enjoyed time with her family and friends. And then
God blessed her in this way.
And now she's married.
Yeah.
And I was just like, when you said that,
did you know this person she's marrying?
He's married. Apparently she used to go to our church, Carrie Vanderwell. What? Oh, okay. Wow, she's got married. Wow.
Again,
I couldn't be happier for her.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's awesome that this happened.
Yeah.
And again, we're not saying this is a guarantee that God will do it this way, but it's a way that God will bless. And it's when often people say it was when I wasn't even looking for it. That's when it happened. It's when you force things, that's when things can happen, because you start to overlook red flags. You try to make things work. It's okay if he doesn't quite believe the same thing I do or whatever.
I'll just start making a square peg in this round hole. Because I'm sure it'll fit.
Yeah.
Where's my hammer?
We can be very like stubborn if we need to.
Yes.
So wait actively. Pursue God.
Pursue God.
Love
God with all your heart, mind, soul.
Remember that the ultimate destination is heaven, not marriage.
Yes. Because in heaven there is no marriage or giving in marriage.
No. But that's like the long-term destination. So
and trying to think of eternity. Yeah, don't hurt my brain.
Stop. Just stop. So that's our podcast on waiting. Hopefully this will help you wait, because I'm going to wait to think about heaven, because that hurts my head.
Yes.
We're going to live my life, and when it happens,
do all the happy things that God wants
God's
me
calling
to
us
do.
to do right now.
Yeah, which is talking to you wonderful people and being a part of your lives.
Remember, if you're single, then God's calling you to be single right now.
Yes.
So you have the gift of singleness. Enjoy it and use it.
Yes. You have a great gift.
Yes.
Yes. Because once you're married, your gift changes.
Yep.
And then
It's a great gift, but but it's a different look.
It's a different look. It's a different gift. And there are things that happen when you're married that you can't, you're juggling a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's a different lane. It's a different
Yep.
way of living, and that's okay.
Yep.
But you just enjoy this gift that you have at the moment, the gift of life, the gift of time, the gift of singleness, all these things Christ has given us, God has given us, and is asking us just to follow Christ, follow God's calling, be more like Christ, and that's what the waiting should be. If this podcast has helped you in any way, let us know. You can always find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. We're on all those. If you want to email us, it's roots@gmail.com. That's ROUTE 77 ministries@gmail.com. And yeah, we'll hope to see you here next time.
Bye for now.
Bye. And that's a wrap on today's discussion about active waiting and singleness. It's clear that waiting isn't about standing still. It's about moving forward, growing personally, and deepening our walk with God. Remember, being single isn't just a phase to rush through. It's a time to embrace and use wisely, preparing not just for a potential future relationship, but, more importantly, for a life that glorifies God in every season. Thank you for joining me today on the Route 77 podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences on this topic. Feel free to reach out through our social media channels or email. Until next time, keep living, keep growing, and remember to live your single life to its fullest.